Okay, I think let's get started. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Norris. I'm the Senior Vice President for Commercial Management here at Inoapps, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. For those of you who don't know Inoapps, quick 30 seconds. So we're a global Oracle dedicated SI, 550 consultants that support our customers' every Oracle need. We service our customers on-premise and cloud solutions, all the way from applications, database, middleware, and infrastructure from our regions in the UK, EMEA, Asia Pac, and North America. And one such customer that we service from all those regions and all of the solutions is QBE, which brings me nicely down to today's webinar. So first of all, I want to apologise on behalf of all of the train drivers in the UK for today. Clearly, we can arrange for a guy to fly from Australia to the UK via America, but we can't get anybody to come in and see him in the centre of London. So apologies there. Clearly, also Dan is from Australia, so let's not mention cricket and rugby today, because I'm sure it will be a sorrowful state for most of us. Some quick housekeeping. No need to tell you where the fire escapes and the toilets are. Normally I would do that if we're in person, but clearly you probably know where your own toilets are, so I won't need to mention those. We are recording today's session for those people who can't make today, and also for future use. You will all be muted, so if you do want to raise a question, please raise it in the chat bar that's at the top of your screens. I have an assistant, Janie, who will be prompting me if there's any questions that's pertinent to the conversation we're having throughout the webinar. Otherwise, we'll keep the questions to the end and raise them to the panel then. And I'll also try and keep to the hour that we have here. We may not take the whole hour. So before we start, let me first of all introduce the panel to you. So let's start with you, Dan. Dan, do you want to quickly introduce yourself, name, role, and serial number, etc.?
For sure. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so Daniel West, Group Head of Finance Systems and Data Solutions at QBE Insurance. I've been with QBE Insurance now probably close to 20 years across a variety of different tech roles. The role that I hold in the organisation today is to manage our run and change environment across a number of different global finance applications, including our pretty significant Oracle footprint across a number of different applications that we manage in our finance estate.
Excellent, thank you, Dan. Next to Oracle, so we've got Jason Rees from Oracle. Jason, do you want to just give us your view on you?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Jason Rees. I head up our technology engineering group across EMEA. Our role is to make sure that we work with our customers and partners to help them understand how they could transform with Oracle, and more importantly, multi-cloud solutions as well. As a World Rugby fan, Andrew, I'm also not looking to talk about rugby at the moment, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And then from Inoapps, so clearly this is a webinar not necessarily about Inoapps or Oracle. We often get asked by our customers to hear from our customers themselves. That's why we've got Dan here to lead. But we do have our engineer from Inoapps as well. So Dean, can I just introduce you as well?
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Dean Korn. I'm the Global Practice Lead for Technology within Inoapps. In my role, I look to help and support the technology products and services that we deliver to our customers like QBE.
Dan, clearly this is about QBE and yourself. Can you just give us a quick overview of what QBE's group strategy was for technology, maybe before the cloud migration, and then we'll come on to migration afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. So our tech strategy is underpinned by our overarching business drivers in group finance. And those three drivers that we focus on in group finance are to make sure that we can deliver robust reporting, meeting our regulatory requirements in a highly controlled and accurate and timely manner. The second objective is to make sure that we can leverage common platforms and capabilities across finance globally and third is to support our evolving demand for particularly sustainability reporting, but also we've got a drive around consistently building out our financial and non-financial metrics across the business. So when you take that and look at our organisation as a global organisation, we have significant footprints in Australia and Asia Pacific. We have a significant footprint here within Europe and also within North America. So it truly is a global organisation, and we've got to try and bring all that together. From a tech perspective, what that translates into is that we have very much a cloud-first strategy in everything that we do. We've also got to focus in and around reducing the complexity of our estate and also forming strategic partnerships across the globe to leverage capability in our key finance applications. So that's in a nutshell, that's what our strategy is in group finance and how we approach our delivery of technology.
Okay, and clearly before you moved before you moved to the cloud, you were leveraging an Oracle on-demand service, which is effectively an on-premise service. What made you then look at adopting cloud as a strategy?
Yeah, I think there's several factors at play all at once. It's almost like a perfect storm, I think, is the best way to describe it. The primary move was we were about to undertake a material data center move where our existing estate was hosted. This was also combined with a number of pending end-of-life issues on some of our key infrastructure, and it really just facilitated the opportunity for us to take a serious look at our cloud options for this important finance set of applications. So yeah, it really was a perfect storm of activities at that point in time.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Jason, I'll come to you now. I guess what trends are you seeing in the marketplace around cloud adoption, especially at Oracle, because clearly you still offer both on-prem and cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have said in the introduction as well, it was my honour to be the exec sponsor from Oracle for the QBE migration and working hand in hand. I always talk about 3 legs of a stool: the customer, the implementation partner, and us now as a cloud provider, not a product company as we were in the past. I think to answer your question around the trends, I mean, I just made note of a few of the things that Dan said there, and absolutely right. Looking for commonality, so common patterns. We see customers demanding, that in a global operation for most customers who want to make use of those patterns. Cloud first, a lot of trends now. People are saying, well, why not cloud, especially when there's a data center exit or a hardware refresh that Dan mentioned as well. And I think also reducing complexity is a lot. We see a lot of customers who are really trying to reduce the technical debt that they have, and they're trying to reduce that complexity in order that they can actually create continuous innovation in a competitive market, whatever the industry is, especially in insurance, for example, or banking. We find customers are trying to reduce that complexity in order that they can fund innovation through things like cloud computing, maybe in insurance looking to create a more accurate risk model, or maybe even revolutionize how they're doing underwriting, for example. But I also think there's an urgency to get to more data-driven transformation as well. With the disruption of the last few years, I think there's a renewed urgency to get to those ability to really exploit the value of data. And what we're finding more, obviously, with AI now, which seems to have come from nowhere in the last couple of years, customers are really aligning their data strategies with the their business objectives in order that they can get the value of the data. And AI, I say, is only accelerating that. And a couple of other things, Andrew, if I may. I think multi-cloud we see as a huge trend, reducing walled gardens, as we would say. And that's about being able to, again, get access to the innovations that Dan talked about, innovations within one cloud provider or multiple cloud providers. From an Oracle point of view, we obviously provide MySQL in AWS and Azure, as well as the ability to run things like OpenShift, VMware on our own cloud, and the multi-cloud strategy we have with Azure. And finally, I think security continues to be a huge focus for many customers, be that data sovereignty, controls, etc. So a major focus when people are transforming, reducing that complexity. Security is still forefront of people thinking.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So just as an aside, we did have a little sweepstake on how long it would take you to mention AI. So whoever had 11 minutes wins. Thank you for that. So just before I pick back up on multi-cloud that you talked about, Dan, I'm going to just ask you quickly. So clearly, this project was around moving eBusiness Suite and some other applications onto OCI. Did you consider moving straight to SaaS and taking out the step to move to OCI first, or was that not in the thinking at the time?
Yeah, it's a really good and valid question, I think, to look at in those circumstances. I think that the move to OCI for us was, rather than straight SaaS, was a risk management play, and we're particularly coming from the perspective of trying to minimise any business impact or interruption. I think with the pending data center move that we had at that time, it gave us the platform per se to undertake a move to OCI that would have been of similar levels of business interruption as the planned data center move. So it was quite an easy discussion to have with our core business stakeholders in that regard. I think at the same time as well, we were able to undertake that move with minimal business interruption, but at the same time, we were able to create a benefits profile at the end that was probably more positive than what we expected at the time. So I think that really sums up why the move to OCI first rather than a straight SaaS move in our circumstances.
Okay, perfect. So maybe I'll come back to SaaS and future next steps coming up a little bit later. Dean, I'll come to you. I mean, clearly we at Inoapps also have a number of other customers that struggle with the decision between OCI and SaaS or Tech Cloud and SaaS. Can you elaborate on that for us and some of the decisions that they go through?
Yeah. I think to Dan's comments, some of the things that we see our customers are wanting to move to the cloud. So there's usually some type of an event like a hardware refresh or maybe a major upgrade. And then there's a consideration, do I jump, make the leap to SaaS, or what can I do in the middle? So I think a lot of organizations take that same risk profile. They use that event, such as a hardware or an upgrade or a refresh, as a springboard to then invest that same effort and time to actually going to the cloud as a strategic direction. And once they're within the cloud, then they're better positioned then to do some of those things that Dan mentioned, as far as the global expansion, being able to ease into newer technologies, upgrades, things like that, and then eventually make that leap at that point, which is a shorter leap, right, from OCI technology into SaaS. So yes, that's a common thing that we see. Another thing that we see with several customers, especially using EBS or other application suites, are they want to get those few extra years so they can plan strategically how to integrate into SaaS or other applications. So again, positioning themselves within the cloud is that initial step. Takes away some of that risk, gives them a better understanding of what's involved, how it affects the business, and then it makes the planning of that move forward to SaaS or other applications usually simpler and less risky.
Okay, and Dan, clearly, I think we'd all love to think that you are 100% Oracle, but clearly there are other technologies there inside QBE as well. Did you consider what other technologies did you consider for this cloud move, and potentially why did you disregard them?
Yeah. Again, look, I think in any move like this, we looked across the spectrum of our options and we assessed them accordingly. I think what it essentially boils down to is the right cloud for the right workload. And in our circumstances, particularly for this move, there's a predominant, area of basically native Oracle applications. So, from our perspective, native Oracle applications running in an Oracle cloud appear to be the most sensible approach for us to take in this situation.
Okay, and Jason, I guess similar question to you. You've mentioned multi-cloud already, but I know that there's some key partnerships with other cloud providers now coming along. So do you want to talk about, as Dan said, the right cloud provider for the right application, the right workload?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'll say Exadata, just so everybody can hear me say AI and Exadata as well, Andrew, on that. But I think exactly to Dan's point, I think many of our customers go to SaaS. One of the things, obviously, just for the audience to realize if they don't, obviously, our SaaS applications run on OCI as a platform. So we would argue you're going to OCI if you're going to SaaS. But ultimately, and again, Dean made this point, is a lot of customers, maybe there's a compelling event around a data center exit, and they're not ready to move to standard business processes. So this is a step that they can go with. So I think that's absolutely right. We see less, actually. I'll get on to your multi-cloud question, but we see less customers just wanting lift and shift, because all lift and shift is doing is actually just removing some hardware and storage from a data center. They're always looking to get some additional functions, even if that's better performance or reporting or whatever it is. And they're also questioning the need to totally refactor everything, because again, then the benefit of getting to that value is further away. I think multi-cloud, though, is really about choice. As you rightly said, customers all have, if they don't have a cloud-first strategy, they certainly have a primary cloud provider. And I think what it is that rather than within data centers, you had Oracle, you had IBM, you had SAP, whatever those technologies in the cloud. Why are you needing to actually use one cloud provider? And our vision as Oracle, and I think this is what QBE are seeing as well, is the right workload for the right cloud for the right workload. But actually, as Oracle, we see our mission to actually remove those walled gardens and actually take the hard engineering work. So actually, our customers, people listening to this call, can actually make use of all the different innovations that the different cloud providers are bringing to the market.
Okay, and Dean, I guess as Inoapps being an Oracle-only service provider, how are we helping customers with their multi-cloud decisions as well?
Well, I think, yeah, I agree. I mean, multi-cloud is the world that we're moving into, and I think to Dan's point and Jason's point is, use the technology that works best on the cloud. So Oracle technology products on Oracle Cloud are going to work better. Say Microsoft Azure specific things are probably going to work better in Azure. But what this allows the customer to do, and what we talk to customers about, is targeting those workloads or those particular technologies or services where they run best. And then the multi-cloud integration and the partnership specifically between, let's say, for example, Microsoft and Oracle allows you to get the benefit of both without having to force you in one direction or the other necessarily, right? So you get that value from both. That integration is transparent through that partnership. We then support the customers through that integration and process. And depending on which perspective they're coming from, either Oracle or Azure, for example, it's a very consistent view. So where I've seen that done with some examples in the past recently, it's been very successful. And customers do appreciate, right, where the cloud providers are actually doing these types of partnerships. It gives them better choice for things that work better for them.
Okay, thanks, Dean. So, Dan, coming back to the project. So, what were your biggest concerns going into the project? What are the things you wanted to make sure you could alleviate with this project, and you wanted to make sure that those problems didn't crop up?
Yeah, I think with any project of this nature, I think one of our biggest concerns was around the size of the move and the potential complexities that would come with this type of move. So making sure how could we mitigate any risks. I sort of refer back to my part on business interruption. So how could we mitigate any risks around having just the minimal amount of business interruption as part of this move? I think as well, the other key parts, and I know Jason mentioned this before, was at an enterprise level within the organisation was to make sure that we had the right protections in place around data sovereignty, that our cybersecurity posture was in alignment with the rest of our processes and procedures within our organisation, and making sure as well from a regulatory perspective that we had the right assessments and the right approvals in place. That all sounds like a lot to get through from a project in this nature, but I think none of this is insurmountable. And I think with the right level of planning and the due diligence across each of those factors, we were able anyway to address them to the right level of satisfaction across our organisation.
And security, was that a big concern for you as well?
Yes, definitely. So yeah, making sure that our deployment was set up, to meet our cybersecurity standards that we have across our enterprise. That was definitely a consideration in this.
Okay, and Dean, do you want to just elaborate a little bit on Oracle Cloud's zero trust approach to security?
Yeah. So obviously, security is a concern for everyone, whether cloud or non-cloud. But it becomes a topic of discussion when you're talking about public cloud services. So yes, I think one of the unique characteristics about Oracle Cloud is the zero trust model. And what that basically is, in a nutshell, is when you establish services and you build out your infrastructure, you move your migrate or build your applications in the cloud, no one is given access or accessibility to anything implicitly. It has to be explicitly defined through security policies and controls and management. So there's nothing that's by default gives anyone access. So that forces you to then take a very holistic view on security, to leverage those tools inside of OCI to ensure that accessibility is appropriate and that the appropriate management and monitoring is in place. So that zero trust model is a cornerstone of how Oracle Cloud works. And then you apply that with secure best practices, right? Which is what we have within QBE. And I think that goes a long way towards addressing the risks and concerns around security.
Excellent. Okay, so Jason, I'm going to come to you next. How did Oracle, and then I'll ask Dean a similar question, how did Oracle and Inoapps allay some of these fears for Dan and for QBE going into the project?
Yeah, I think I referred to earlier the three-legged stool. I think what it is that Oracle has really moved from a product company to a services company, and therefore what we will always want to focus on is the outcome, the benefit risk that Dean talked about before. So I think it's working with with implementation companies like yourself, Andrew, just really mapping out what that looks like. So understanding security policy, how it is used on-premise. And I think respectfully challenging our clients and customers to understand, well, in the cloud with a shared responsibility model, what does that look like to avoid us actually trying to, I suppose, create a monstrosity in the cloud that actually doesn't provide the innovation that we need to. So a lot of the services that Dean referred to, they're free, they're ready to use. Why would you need to put your own physical firewall into an environment where actually you can use a firewall service, for example? So I think what we did with QBE and with yourselves was just work together, really understood those milestones, really understood the concerns or risks, spent time making sure that people understood what OCI was, what the onboarding looked like, what the landing zone looked like, maybe actually even comparing it to what they were used to with AWS, do some comparisons between different services, and generally build a partnership in order that when we did get to a point when we went live, it was almost like a damn squid, because it was like, oh, good, we're live, rather than something spectacular, which it should be, because ultimately the business should just continue, that it shouldn't have to be a celebration every time.
Okay, and Dean, I guess from an SI point of view, what else did Inoapps do to help allay some of those fears for QBE?
Well, I think the key thing is to work closely with QBE and what their concerns were and the security posture that they wanted to maintain, right? I mean, there's definitely a standard approach, right? There's a lot of standardization in how security can be applied within the cloud and Oracle Cloud. But you also obviously should take into consideration what the customer specific concerns and risk tolerance and what policies make the most sense for them. So taking that knowledge, then use a standardized process, right? Apply those customizations or specific policies to the customer, to QBE, and then work with them to confirm and verify that, right? So that was a key aspect of it. And I think a lot of it was in just following the best practices, standardized approach to it that assures both security and security compliance going forward.
Okay, great. Dan, just very quickly, what made you select Inoapps as your partner of choice for the migration?
Yeah, I think within our process, we were mindful of a couple of things. I think, first of all, demonstrated capability with similar initiatives within the financial services sector. So I think this is really focused around the what. Also around, again, I'm going to keep coming back to it, our minimising that business interruption was really important to us. So, that was around, the detailed planning on the approach, how we would undertake this through from migrating lower environments first and proving out the concept, I think was really important for us to sort of demonstrate that this can actually be done. And then, from a security compliance perspective as well, the ability to produce some of the detailed solution designs for us to how we would tackle the security posture from network protection, firewall protection, data encryption, data leakage, and then right the way through to how we would then manage the environment with standard sort of SOC 2 type controls as well. So I think all of that wrapped together was really important for us.
Excellent. Okay, so when you were starting out on the project, what benefits were you hoping to get from not only the migration but also the cloud solution at the end? Did you have a view as to what were your key success factors and what benefits you were looking for?
Yeah, so look, I think our key benefits, obviously starting off, was to make sure that we could address any of our deadlines within our data center exit, which was really important. I think from there, one of the key things that we picked up on really early on this was that we had the ability to redirect key staff in our teams from was essentially infrastructure maintenance and support tasks to delivering meaningful change on our platforms so that they can deliver real business benefits. So we were able to realize that quite early post the go live, and I think Jason mentioned it as well. It was the go live process for us was, okay, we're live, we're running, everything's working, and so it made that transition for our team, who had been heavily involved in keeping these environments current and up to date. They could pivot and work elsewhere on supporting actually our overall global finance strategy and delivering change into our environments that way.
Okay, and Jason, I know you work closely on this project, but a number of other projects. Are there any other benefits that you see your customers looking to get from a cloud migration?
Yeah, I think that a huge amount. I think for me anyway, it comes down to sort of the choice. So when I look at OCI, when I describe OCI, I always put it into three pillars. I talk about distributed cloud, so the choice. So in QBE's example, they were happy because of the compliance and security we talked about. They are happy to go to public cloud. But what we find a lot, certainly in financial services, a lot of customers who want the benefit of cloud technology, but they're not comfortable to go to the public cloud for various reasons. We talked about data sovereignty before. Maybe it's location, maybe it's concern about the latency between their sort of legacy environments and the cloud environment. So for me, when I talk about distributed cloud, that's where we talk about choice, whether or not it's multi-cloud, whether or not it's things like XSCC that lots of banks and financial institutions are making use of across EMEA. So this is a OCI basically focused on the database. We've got customers now looking at DRCC, so the full range of OCI services, but within the location of their choosing. So that's sort of the first benefit we talk about. Within enterprise cloud, as we would also deem OCI, and I know QBE got benefit of this. When we look at our flexible configurations, what that means is we're not locking customers into a t-shirt size. You have to have this amount of compute, you have to have this amount of storage or memory. Customers can choose, which means actually you reduce cost and wastage on an environment you don't really need to be concerned about. So, and then automation that Dan talked about, the ability to actually remove those administrative tasks that don't need to be there. And also we do find as a huge benefit in OCI is the way that we charge for egress as well, especially when you're looking at large data sets. Being charged a lot of money to get data out of the cloud doesn't seem particularly right to us. It's the customer's data. So the ability to reduce cost in things like egress and everything is important. So, those are the key things that we sort of talk to customers about, as well as the innovations that we're bringing in other technologies, which I'm sure we'll get onto in later.
Okay, good. So Dan, just back to you. So you've highlighted the benefits that you were expecting to see. Were there any unexpected benefits that you thought, I never even thought of that, but actually that's a really positive thing around the project and the Oracle Cloud?
And I think Jason touched on it. So one thing we we probably underestimated for us was the flexibility, the ability to effectively turn the dials up and down in the environment. It was something we thought about, but then once we got into a live situation and into a realistic run scenario, the ability for us to scale our environments up and down depending upon our workloads at that point in time. So obviously in a finance world, things around critical quarter end close, you normally see a significant uptake in data flowing in into the general ledger, and we were able to take advantage of that, and we have done several times. And again, it was something in the back of our mind, but when we saw it come to life, it was probably an unexpected benefit. Is probably the best way I can describe it.
Okay, so let me come to you again, Jason, with general trends in the financial services sector. So clearly we understood what the benefits that Dan and QBE were expecting to get, and some of the unexpected things that they saw out of Oracle Cloud. What other trends are Oracle seeing in financial services that I think our audience would be interested in hearing?
Yeah, great question. I think sort of we touched upon it. I touched upon it in my opening, is the fact that people are looking for continuous innovation. We're finding our clients wanting to get to that evergreen state, be it SaaS or be it the automation of services. They want to get to a point where they can focus on their core business rather than actually sort of running IT. That seems to be a continuous trend. I'll come back to data sovereignty. That seems to be certainly across Europe. There's a lot of conversations. The EU is continuously talking about data sovereignty and putting legislation in place, but each country is trying to work out themselves. What does that mean? In a global world, we seem to have got much more back to sort of a smaller world where everybody wants to sort of control their own data. And I think there's concerns about that. And again, all joking aside, we mentioned sort of AI. I think there's a huge trend now to get access to data in order to be able to take the foundational models or your own sort of fine tuning against your own data. But it all comes down to this trend of reducing cost in order to unlock innovation, but doing it a very secure way of doing it. And again, I've mentioned it before. I just feel that customers, when we talk to us in Oracle, are saying we want choice, and we're now looking at mission critical. Dan talked about this as being a fundamental system for QBE. Most of the clients we're talking to now have done the easy stuff a number of years ago. They're now saying this is mission critical. I now need to work out, is there a benefit to move this? So whether or not you're talking about banking, talking about telco, you're talking about public sector, it's the same trends I'm seeing: unlocking innovation, making sure you get the value of data, and making sure that your security posture is correct.
Okay, and Dean, what Jason and Dan says around expected benefits and what they're seeing in the financial services sector, does that resonate with us? And what other things are you seeing with our other financial services customers?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of the same things. I think that one of the interesting things I see, I've been in this business for a while, is there's a focus back to data, right? When I started my career, data was the big thing, right? Databases and data drove everything. Then it kind of moved to the middleware and application systems, and data kind of took a back seat. And I think we're seeing data start to come back to the forefront as being part of value add, innovation, helping drive decisions, drive revenue, drive opportunity. And I think to that point, especially in financial services and similar industries where data is a big aspect of it, what we see in cloud in those areas is the flexibility, the capability, the costing model of being able to leverage that data, the ability to innovate by attaching it to analytics platforms, data consolidation, eventually AI, right, without having to move things around a lot, is I think a trend that we see a lot of customers and organizations starting to gravitate to. We see a lot of questions around that. I mean, I know AI is the big topic, ChatGPT and all that. But I think the conversations that I've had recently is more, how can I leverage that within my organization with my data? ChatGPT is cute, right? And it's kind of fun, but how do I use my data? How do I leverage that data as an asset through AI or analytics or whatever the innovation point happens to be? I think that's a key thing, especially in financial services or anything that's heavily data oriented.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Dan, back to you. What lessons have you learned for future projects from this one? I mean, every project, I'd love to think every project goes absolutely swimmingly from one end to the other, but I'm sure there are a few bumps and issues along the line. So, what lessons have you learned for the future?
Yeah, look. Overall, it's fair to say that overall the project was a success. I think otherwise I wouldn't be here talking about it on a webinar. But I think one of the key learnings for us is particularly with a finance application estate like ours, and particularly from a global company, is to make sure prior to your move that you understand all of the different integrations that come into that estate from a data perspective, because that is the lifeline of that application. And I think we all of us have spoken already today about the continual drive around data and the use of data and leveraging the data. So that's the supply of the data into the system. So I think it's really important to make sure that you understand all of those integrations and all of the technical complexities with those. Even spend a little bit of time up front in the program understanding those before going headlong into that. The other thing as well would be make sure that you migrate a lower environment first. I think that helps smooth the way, and again makes you understand your own environments a bit better, and also helps set the project up for success. And then obviously from a production perspective, do a dry run. Do not do a dry run so that you know the exact timings, that this is going to take. And I'm coming at that again from a business interruption angle. Our businesses run almost 24/7, so to take our business off the air for a day over a weekend, whilst it doesn't seem immaterial, it is actually an impact. So making sure that you understand that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. And Dean, from an SI point of view, what were some of the things that we learned from this first project that we did with QBE for our future OCI projects?
Yeah, I think to Dan's points, they're all spot on. I mean, trying something small, walk before you run sort of an approach, right? Because everybody's learning a little bit about it. The pre-run on production, right? In your planning and in your execution, being able to test that production deployment and then being able to revert back, right? Just so that you understand the timing. I think the considerations in the entire process, from just people, technology, and process, right, in reducing the risk or the impact to the customer. I mean, an ideal migration or transition is the customer really sees the end user really sees no significant or any interruption. So I think those are things that we get to work with QBE on, learned more, but follow those directives, and those are things I know that we use going forward in all the plans that we do for our migration or a transition.
Okay, Dan, I think final question from me then. So we talked right at the beginning around potential moves to SaaS instead of OCI, and I said I'd come back to the future. So what does the future hold for QBE in terms of its IT strategy?
Yeah, so I think again, if I revert back to the point around the cloud first strategy, so we've got a significant percentage of our estate now, either SaaS or PaaS based. Our next steps now is to actually leverage the capabilities within those environments. So we're in the environments, we're up and running. There are now many features and capabilities that are available to us within those environments that were not there in an on-premise world. And it's really up to us now to sort of build out our roadmap and how we then implement some of those capabilities just into our everyday run life from there. There is, I know Jason spoke earlier about, the use of AI. Even the running of an OCI environment is starting to leverage more and more AI around some of your run metrics and observations and things like that. So, for us, that's what it's really about now is really looking at each of those new capabilities that are available in these platforms and how we integrate it into our run environment.
Okay, and Jason, I know you probably need to put a safe harbour statement around some of this, but what are Oracle looking at for future strategies for around technology, and do you want to comment on Dan's view of the QBE strategy as well?
Yeah, I mean, I will. Just a couple of other thoughts I had just on best practices we see, Andrew, if I may, is
Yeah.
making sure you get the application team engaged in this. You know, having Dan involved, it obviously helps because they're the application team. If it's just a technology transformation, it never works because the application team need to buy in for the downtime and etc. And also start with security. Start with security in mind because again, otherwise it will stall. That just a couple of thoughts on that. I think absolutely optimization. So getting the best use out of OCI, best use of any cloud provider is really important. Again, it's not just a lift and shift. Look at the different technologies available. Making use of things like autonomous database. We see a lot of companies now looking to that. I think what we're seeing as Oracle is there's a huge drive for people to make use of large language models now, again, to train against their own, take those foundational models and make use of those alongside their own data. Huge demand still for GPUs, for customers to be able to build those superclusters in order to make use of those. And I suppose that I would be remiss if I didn't mention 23 AI that was announced last week. It's generally available, and there's some highlights that I think really sort of align to what we're talking about here. I suppose if I break it down into 3 pillars, if I may, just quickly, I think one of the first things we're bringing out with 23 AI is to help with data and AI is this vector search approach. So you can now sort of make sure that you are unlocking your private data. You'll be able to use retrieval augmented generation, for example, but the vector database, vector search within the database. You don't have to move data around like Dean just talked about. And we're even bringing in, which I think is quite cool, the ability to use those large language models to be able to query the database using natural language. So we don't all have to be able to write SQL statements anymore, which I thought was quite cool. For developers, we're bringing in innovations around what we call relational unification. So rather than developer has to choose a different data type they're going to use, do they use relational, do they use object stroke JSON, or do they use things like graph? They can use whichever format they want, but under the covers, it's still the Oracle database. And again, it removes complexity. And also what we're bringing in is something called raft replication for mission criticality. So the ability to take a globally distributed environment, break that logical database up into multiple physical databases that allow you to distribute that data around the world. Ultimate data sovereignty is global scale. So I think what we are seeing, and Dean makes a really good point, I think the world's coming back to data again now, and a lot of the innovations you'll see through Oracle is choice, innovation, and all based on data.
Okay, great, thank you. One final question, Dan. Clearly, your choice around Oracle and Inoapps, etc., was made by QBE and your team. Do you go out to any independent third parties for advice and guidance on these things, or is everything made in, or all decisions made in house?
I think it depends on the decision. I think, Andrew, that needs to be made. I think in certain circumstances we will. We've got a variety of different teams across our organisation, from procurement to risk to legal, to my own team from a tech perspective, to look and assess and make those decisions. And then sometimes, depending on that, we potentially do go external and use a third party as well.
Okay. Thank you. So I think those are all of the things we were going to talk about on the webinar. So I wanted to have around 45 minutes of chat and conversation, and then open the floor to any questions. Janie, if I could just bring you in here, do we have any questions on the chat line?
Yeah, we have a question here. Are there any opportunities that you're looking for in the future to leverage AI within OCI for business benefit at QBE?
So I guess let's take that one to Dan, and then
Dan,
maybe
yeah.
Jason to comment on afterwards. Yeah.
Look, I think our approach, our overall approach to AI, particularly in group finance, is to look and leverage capability within our partners. So, we in the early stages of assessing some of the AI capabilities that are in and around our finance estate. We're very early on in the journey, I think, is the best way to describe where we're at there.
Okay, and Jason, your view on that one?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I hope the answer is yes, Dan, at some point, and I'm sure collectively would help. But I think the key thing is to understand the use case, the use cases. That's where we find a lot of our customers are sort of struggling with what can we use. I think what we find a lot, especially when customers have gone to SaaS, because AI is embedded, they can make use of it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. We understand the use case. Dan's got the data in OCI. The services around it we can make use of in there. So maybe watch this space on that one, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Janie, any other questions?
Yeah, we have another one, I think, for Dean, which is what's Inoapps' approach to multi-cloud?
Yeah, so going back to some other comments, so working with customers, if there's a need or we see a benefit to the multi-cloud, if a customer already has a particular cloud partner and they have an Oracle footprint and they're looking to migrate that to the public cloud, again, we talked about OCI probably being the best place for Oracle on Oracle, Microsoft on Microsoft, is then being able to help the customer facilitate that. So I think our approach is to not force everything that a customer has. It obviously doesn't fit in one cloud to make it fit, right? Square hole, round peg thing like that. To just acknowledge the fact that customers are going to have more than one cloud. I mean, that's really the world that we live in. So how can we best use that? How can we simplify, reduce, eliminate the complexity working with the customer, and then support what works well in OCI, and then integrate that with whatever the other cloud providers are. And again, I can talk from experience, it does work. It's like everything, it just needs some communication, some planning, understanding what works best, pilot if necessary, if there are still concerns. But it is definitely doable, and I've seen both small scale and very large scale multi-cloud deployments that work.
Fantastic. Jason, I know you talked about multi-cloud already. Anything else you wanted to add to that, or have you said everything so far?
I doubt I said everything, Andrew. I'll probably comment further. I think what I'm particularly excited is the relationship that Oracle has with Azure. This is additive for both companies. This is not about us trying to grab workloads from Azure or them trying to grab workloads from OCI. This is really about customers who haven't been able to move the mission critical for various reasons, maybe because they've got a huge investment in Azure and they haven't necessarily seen OCI as part of their cloud strategy. The ability to actually deploy Oracle, so it's OCI that runs in an Azure data center, removing we take all the engineering headaches, but a customer's able to use the Mac investment they've moved in Azure to make use of Oracle database, and in the future 23 AI on that platform as well. I think is just a fantastic way to actually take, according to Gartner, we still only got, sort of 20% of enterprise workloads that move to the cloud. This is a great thing for you, our customers, our potential customers, just to be able to access those innovations that us as cloud providers, Microsoft, Oracle, and others are providing. So I think multi-cloud is the way to go, but ultimately it comes down to understanding what you're trying to do as a customer. Cloud computing is great, but let's go with our eyes wide open and make sure we understand the value and benefit that we're trying to get out of it.
Fantastic. Okay, Janie, any other questions come through in the last few minutes, or is that those?
Yeah, there is another one here for Dan. Is asking what additional functionality in the cloud have QBE been able to adopt since moving to OCI? Is there anything that's been really useful?
Yeah, look, I think I alluded to it earlier. Is in and around the ongoing support for the infrastructure and hosting. So there's some quite unique functions that are available to us in terms of dashboards and things like that. So that's probably the key area. And like I said, it was a little bit of an unexpected benefit. We sort of thought it would be there, but it's been a lot better than what we thought, and we've been able to take advantage of it. So yeah, I think that's the key part for us from an OCI side.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan.
Yep, that's all the questions that we have now.
Well, thank you very much for everybody attending. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you, Dan, in particular, for coming along and talking about QBE's experiences with Oracle. Jason, thank you very much for taking time out of Oracle's Q4 end to spend a bit of time with us. And Dean, who's over in the US at the moment, thank you for staying up until 2 o'clock in the morning for talking to us as well. Unless there's any other questions, I'll end the webinar now and just thank everybody else for coming on, listening to us. If there's anything you want to follow up on, any other questions you've got, please either email our Inoapps email address at info@inoapps.com, or go directly to Danielle Brown, which is danielle.brown@inoapps.com. But Danny will be following up with you all. Thank you very much, and I'll close the session there. Thank you.